So yesterday we introduced custom cells. We introduced custom cells with self-resizing cells. What does that mean? Basically, that means the content of our cell determine the height of the cell. So yesterday we made an app. It was called Fellow Countries. Luba, right? It was called Fellow Countries, and the height of the cell was determined by the country's description, right? So as we see here, for example, our Nigeria country, the description of Nigeria was able to grow the cell's height. So we did not give the cell an explicit height, right? We did not give the cell an explicit height. The height was determined by the contents of the description, right? That's where we got introduced to custom cells. We got introduced to custom cells with heights being determined by the contents of the cell. That's known as self-resizing cells, right? Self-resizing cells, the cell resizes itself. Yesterday in lab, we got a different situation. We got a situation where we wanted to return our own explicit height. Why did we want to do that? We had an image that was pretty big, right? We could have gone one of two places. We could have gone self-resizing, where the image resizes the cell, and we put in our own labels over the image. So that way the image would take up the entire width of the cell, of the device. It would take the entire width, and the cell would be the height of the image, right? I think some of us came into situations where the image was very big, correct? When you first ran the app. Right. Why was that happening? Because the image itself was a pretty big image. The image we had for countries was a smaller image. We had a thumbnail image. Everybody with me? We had a thumbnail image. The thumbnail image was roughly 200 by 200 pixels, right? But the image you had in your lab, it was a pretty big image. Maybe between 1,000 by 800, roughly about that size-ish. So that's a pretty big image to use for a thumbnail, right? So that's why you guys run into issues really quickly. Like, hey, my image is very big. I can't see the content, right? So there's two approaches we could have gone. One, have an explicit size for the image view, right? So that way our image takes up that small frame, whatever the frame is. It could be 200 by 200. But we also, in order to make that work, we have to return an explicit height for the cell. Everybody with me? We have to return an explicit height for the cell. Yesterday, we did not, because the cell resized itself. In lab, we had to return an explicit height in order for our cells to render the height correctly based on what we did in the custom cell storyboard. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? Okay, so what am I talking about, or where are we headed? Basically, that's where we headed, right? So the lab yesterday, the first question asked, use the standard cell. Use the standard cell that iOS gives us. The standard cell is UITableViewCell, right? The standard cell is UITableViewCell. You do not create a custom cell. The cell you use by default is a UITableViewCell. When we say dequeue, give us back a cell, we get back a UITableViewCell. Any questions about that? Okay. So this is the first part of the lab, right? Basically, create a table view using the cell given to us, right? So we didn't have to create any custom cell there. Any questions about that? Okay, next question asks, now create a custom cell. Go ahead and create a custom cell where you're the one in charge of your design, right? There was no design specific prompts, right? Unless I'm mistaken here. There was nothing saying exactly how you should put your image, right? So here, this particular example uses 3 labels because our default, how many labels does our default cell have? If we use UITableViewCell, how many labels do we have access to? 2, right? We have our text label and we have our detailed text label. Right? Those are the things we should know. Those are the things that we've gone through a couple times, right? So you have a cell. If you say cell.text label, you get that text label, right? Or you have the detailed text label. Any questions about that? Right? If you want to review that, I please advise that we do bookmark what I sent out last week for UITableViewCell. So UITableViewCell, I'm looking at the documentation here. I'm looking at the documentation here, and this is what we have access to. Can everybody see in the back? Okay, this is the cell. This is the 4 types of cells we have. We have a basic cell, right, which has an image view to the left. We have our text label in the center, right? That's a basic cell. If you go to Interface Builder and you say you want a write detail cell, remember Interface Builder, that's where you go to toggle between the cells, right? Everybody? Questions about that? Okay, so you could toggle between 4 types of cells that you have. You have the basic cell, which is the upper left cell here. You have the write detail cell, which has an image view to the left. It has a text label, right? And it has a detailed text label. So everything is in line. Questions about that? Next, we have a subtitle, which we've used before. So those cells you should know for Monday, not Mondays, not Monday. For Friday, we should know those cells. So if we ask you to go ahead and use a subtitle cell or have your cell have a subtitle, you should know what you need to do. You need to go to Interface Builder and toggle custom to subtitle. Any questions about that? We'll be doing that again together because I really want us to go through that lab again together so that we're not losing anything along the way. Next cell, we have a left detail cell, right? Where we have the text label to the left and we have the detailed text label to the right. Okay? Right? I mean, I don't see that being used at all, but it's there for us. Right? Everybody with me? Most often you'll see subtitle or you'll see a basic or write detail. But after that, you want to create your own custom cell. Because so far we see we have restrictions, correct? We only have 2 labels. If I go back to, let me select that out, and please bookmark the thing on the UI table view so that you know what the cells have. We developers, we should know what the things we have, what the properties are. At least on the high surface, we should know what the properties are. A cell, you know it has a text label, you know it has a detailed text label. We haven't gotten through accessory views yet, but there's a lot of things a cell has. And I really encourage us to go beyond what we just see here. Really explore. This is your craft. You have to explore things beyond the classroom. The classroom is not enough. Okay, so I will select this out. Like break things. Like what else can I do in a cell? Can I give a cell a background color? Can we give a cell a background color? Right? A cell is a what? It's a UI view. Can a UI view have a background color? Yes. So can a cell have a background color? Yes. Right? Those are the things. Like experiment with them. Like can I change the background color of a cell? Can I change every other background color on the cell? Can I make every other color a different color on the cell? Those are the things. Those are where you learn. By breaking things. Like when you see kids breaking toys, right, and they become engineers, it didn't just happen overnight. They broke the car, they figured out how to make it work again, broke it again, figured out how to make it go in reverse, made a remote control car. That's how we learn. We break, we tweak stuff. So, this is UITableViewCell, right? That's what I'm looking at right now, the document. And that's what I was asking. So what are the properties on a cell? We have image view, we have text label, and we have detailed text label. And how many types of cells we have from iOS? We have 4. We have basic, we have write detail, we have subtitle, and we have left detail. Any questions about that? Okay, cool. And very, very important, remember, if you want to have access to detail, you could set cell.detail text label. But don't forget, please, do not forget to go to Interface Builder and change the cell to a subtitle cell. Everybody with me? If you do not do that, even if you have your cell.detail text label, you won't see this subtitle appear. Okay? We'll do that again together because I think we have the first option here. For this particular cell, it's going to be a subtitle. Okay? So really pay attention to what's happening there. Because if you want the subtitle, that label beneath, saying cell.detail text label is not enough. You have to go to Interface Builder, Attributes Inspector, and change the cell type. Questions about that? Okay, cool. So this is where we headed. So this is the basic cell we have from iOS. And this is the custom cell, our second step we'll create. So we might create a UITabBarController, right? Where we have different tabs with different cells, so we have access to it. Everybody with me? as opposed to commenting out what we did before. Cool? Does that work for everybody? A tab bar controller, different tabs, right? You could go to different table views and see how they look. All right. Next up, we have our favorite friend, making sections, right? We'll go through the making sections part. I think that we'll start off with making sections part, right? And I encourage us to start doing the Game of Thrones, even if I say it's due next week. Please start doing it now. It's good review. Do it now. Start off by making the sections first. So you have your array. You have your array. Make an array of arrays. Any questions about that? Okay. All right. So this is the last one we'll stop on. So we'll create this table view using sections that we created. And basically, it's the same custom cell we had from the second option, right? Same custom cell, but this time it's in sections, right? And yesterday I got questions about, oh, I don't know what to use, when to use where. We've been stressing that a UI table view data source is important because without that, the table view doesn't know where the data is coming from. Is there any question about that, what I just said? Right, the UI table view data source by name, data source, is where am I getting the data? And what's the two important methods we need? Yulia, what's the first one for UITableView data source? Self for row. And Brendan, what's the second one? Number of rows in section. Right? So those are the two important parts of the table view. That's all it needs for it to work. One, how many rows do I have? Some data returns 10, so I have 10 rows. You need to make sure you give me a cell for each of those rows, or I'll have a problem, right? So that's where cell for row comes in. It returns a cell for each of those rows that you said you have, right? It's good for us because all what we have to do is set it up once, and then every time cell for row gets called, the same cell gets returned, meaning the same configuration for the cell gets returned. It's not like we have to do 10 different configurations. Everybody with me? We just write the code once, and every time cell for row gets called, our cell is configured the same way. And for this particular one here, we have two other methods we need for the sections. We have two methods we need for the sections. They're not required, but they're needed in order to render our sections. What are those two methods? What's the first one? Tiffany? How do we get our sections rendered correctly? We have a sections table, right? We have our cell for row already. We have our number of rows in section. What else do we need?
You need your, oh my God.
That's why we could use our notes. Don't feel.
No, I'm looking at it.
Yeah, feel free to use your notes.
Wait, you said we have our cell for row, we have our call for row.
We have our cell for row already, and we have our number of rows in section. So we need
number of sections.
Number of sections, right? And somebody else, we need number of sections. We need to know how many classifications we have. That's number of sections, right? What's the last method we need? Next person. Chelsea, we need one more method for our sections to work. So Tiffany said we need a number of sections. We need to know how many sections we have. The title, right? Very good. So Chelsea said we needed the title. Without the title, we're not going to see amphibian here. We're not going to see bird here, right? We'll have the sections, but we won't have the title. Everybody with me? Keep in mind there's more methods there to do more customization. When I point us to the documentation and I tell us to bookmark it, I say that for a reason. Because part of it is just browsing the thing and seeing what's available. You might not need it right away, but at some point you might be like, hey, can I change the height of the header? Yes, I can. There's a method for that. Right? Can I change the view for the header? Yes, there's also a method for that. Right? So those are the things where you browse it, just browse it. Like you browse a book, like you browse the library. You might want to pick up that book someday. Right? So at the back of your head, it clicks, oh, I've seen that method somewhere on the delegate or on the data source. Right? A table view has two protocols. It has a data source, which we've used, and it has a delegate, which we haven't used, we will use today. Cool? All right, so let's start building here. So this is the three views we're after, right? And as time permits, we'll go through them. And I think it's better if we go through them with a tab bar controller. That way we're not removing the previous view we had, okay? All right, so let's go to our zooAnimals. So this is our zooAnimals here. Let's just go through what we have. We have a zooAnimal model. So if you click on the zooAnimal.swift, we have a zooAnimal model that we had yesterday. It's the same thing we had yesterday, right? We have a name. I only changed it, I just changed it to a struct. So if you saw a class yesterday, I changed it to a struct, right? So this is a struct here. And we have a name, we have an image number, which we use for the image, right? An image number is coming from the assets, everybody. We have an origin, we have a classification, which we'll use now to create the sections, okay? And we have info, which is the info of the animal, the description of the animal. So that's what we have here. Our view controller is empty. We'll put the code in there for our view controller. Our storyboard is also empty. If your Xcode is acting weird, just restart your computer. We haven't started coding yet, or maybe do a total shutdown and start again, okay? It's been either very buggy or very memory intensive, especially this particular version, Xcode 11. It might be the Swift UI integration, who knows? But it's a bit buggy. So if, starts clean, if you don't need Slack, close Slack, or if you don't need all your tabs in Chrome, maybe close some of them. Anything that could limit the resources would probably help. All right, and we have our assets. Again, those assets are coming from, we access those assets from the asset number, okay? Every animal has an asset number. Those are where the images are coming from. Great, so let's start off with our favorite part of the application. We'll start off by making the sections, right? As I said, please start making your sections today if you can for Game of Thrones. So get used to doing it. Get used to doing it. Get to your model, create the sections. When I'm talking about the sections, the array of arrays, right? We need the array of arrays to have our last screenshot, the sections app work, okay? All right, so let's keep going down here. I'll go all the way down and I'll create a function at the bottom here. I'll create a function here. It's going to be a static function. Why am I making a static function? Because I do not want to create an instance of zooAnimal to get access to my array of arrays. I simply want to call my array of arrays on zooAnimal dot whatever the method name is. So the method name, let's call it classification sections for now. That's fine. And what does it return? Anybody want to tell me what it returns? An array of arrays, right? An array of arrays of zooAnimals. Thank you. Great. So this is what we're returning. The most important part of making an array of arrays section is what are we sorting it by? What is the sections? What makes the sections? In our case, what makes the sections? Lilia, what makes the sections? How do we divide up the sections for this particular question? It's in the lab. It might be the 5th number on the lab. If you don't have access to the lab, go to yesterday's lab and click on lab here for yesterday and go down to where it says sections here. Use sections, number 5, right? Use sections with section headers for different classification of animals, right? So the section headers are classifications of the animals, right? Is it a mammal? That sort of thing. Is it an amphibian, right? So this is the criteria for our array of arrays. How do we break them apart? We break them apart by classification. So we have enough information there, so we could go ahead and start writing our logic, right? Again, every question might be different as to how you're breaking up that array or making that array of arrays. So you as the developer needs to identify how am I dividing up those sections? Is it by gender? If gender is available, sure, I could do it. If it's by country, we've done that already. Or continent, we've done that, right? By what you dividing those sections? In our case, we're dividing them by classification. So one of the most important parts of it is sorting the thing. Make sure it's sorted correctly. If it's continents, sort the continents, right? Sort it ascending, whatever the logic is asking for, right? In our example here, we'll sort it ascending, right? where it's the smallest letter, meaning sort ascending, meaning from A to Z. Okay? So let's first sort zooAnimals. So we'll say sorted zooAnimals. And zooAnimals we get from zooAnimals here. And we'll say sorted on it. It's a closure. We'll use trailing closure syntax here. Cool. Trailing closure syntax, and sorted takes 2 arguments, right? Sorted takes 2 arguments. The first argument is $0 if we use in shorthand syntax, okay? If you want to sort something, it has to be 2 things we sorted, right? If you're sorting by height, is this person taller than that person? You don't sort something with 1 object. Everybody? So the sorted closure takes in 2 arguments. So here we'll say sorted by, we have classification, and we say ascending. So ascending is less than symbol. The less than symbol is ascending. And we'll say $1. So $0 is the first argument. $1 is the second argument. So there. So we have our animals sorted, right, by classification. So far, so good? Yes?
The zooAnimals that you have
Is the zooAnimals the struct has. So the zooAnimals is coming from here. So we have a type property here called zooAnimals. It just returns us an array of zooAnimals. So that's what we use in here because we need data. All right, cool. So we have an array of sorted zooAnimals. Great. Next up, we want to get how many classifications do we have, right? How many classifications do we have? So we'll create a map. We'll map over the classification. We'll map over classification. We'll use our sorted animals. We'll map over the classification, and we'll make it a set so it returns us a unique amount of classifications, right? Why do we need a unique amount of classifications? The sections are unique, right? The sections are unique. We want 1 amphibian section. We don't want 3 amphibian sections, right? We want 1 mammal section. We don't want 5 mammal sections. So let's go ahead and do that. So step 2 here, use a set to identify unique classifications. So here we'll say let unique classifications equal to, we'll say sorted zooAnimals that map. What does map do again? Tanya, what does map do? So all the elements in the collection, and what does it do? So that's good. So it goes through every element, like all the closures do, right? Sorted goes through all the elements. Map goes through all the elements, but it does something else. It transforms all the elements. So here we want to transform the elements. Basically, we just want to return an array of strings where the string is classification. Okay? So how do we achieve that? We say $0, the element. Our element there is zooAnimal. Everybody with me? The current element I have, $0, represents a zooAnimal. Why does it represent a zooAnimal? Because we have an array of sorted zooAnimals. In that collection, each element is a zooAnimal. So we want to perform a transformation on the zooAnimal. We want it to return us an array of just classification names. Questions about that? Yes? In our case, we'll just, it's not the first, say that again, sorry. Yes, exactly. We'll just return the same array. Kind of like redundant in a sense, but we want to transform that element. And the way we want to do it, we want to say, hey, go ahead, map every value and return me the classification string. Yes, exactly. But it's a higher order, right? Because you have a function taking a function, returns an array for us in that case. So here we have our $0, we access classification. Currently, if we option click on unique classifications, we see it's an array of strings, right? We know what arrays do, right? Arrays store duplicates as well. Everybody? So right now, I have various values of amphibian. That's not what we want, right? So what can we do here? Right, so cast it to a set, right? So use the set initializer, as Christian is saying. Use the set initializer and convert the array to a set. So now we have, if we option click on our unique classifications, we have a set of strings. We have a set of strings. We guarantee that that set is unique. We're guaranteed at this point that the set is unique. So that set represents the sections in our table view. Cool. Questions? Questions before we move on. So you have an array, you remove the duplicates from the array using a set. Yes?
So map is each one is going to put it into the set and it's already in the set.
Map doesn't do that. Set does that.
No, but map is going to each of the elements.
Yes, and it's returning as the classification name.
Oh.
Yeah. So it returns as a classification array, and then we convert that array to a set. And that removes the duplicates. So a couple steps there, right?
And that's basically just taking the place of doing for elements in zooAnimals, if element back and hey, like it's just basically just turning that whole thing.
Exactly, exactly. So that's the power of a higher order function, right? Very functional, one line of code, it does your intention of what you want to do. Very good. All right, so here we have our classification, unique classifications, great. Next up, let us create, we have enough information to create an array of arrays. An array of empty arrays. We have enough information to create an array of empty arrays. Why are we creating an array of empty arrays? So as we loop, we put it in the correct bucket. As we loop through our zooAnimals array, we put it in the correct bucket. Example, if we have 5 empty buckets with our continents, as we loop through our countries, we put each country in its correct continent. Everybody? Cool. So here we will create an empty array of zooAnimal array. Cool. So here we need to make it mutable because we need to be able to add to it. So we start out with var, and we'll call it sections, or maybe, let's see, classification section. Just call it sections for now. So sections, and how we create an array of arrays, we use the array initializer. That takes a parameter, or takes an argument, repeating and a count. It takes a repeating and a count parameter, 2 parameters. Repeating, what do I want to repeat? I want to repeat a zooAnimal array. How many times do I want to repeat it? I want to repeat it, how many times do I want to repeat it? What's that? Right, so unique classifications that count, right? Very good, Chelsea. So let's go ahead and continue writing that out. So repeating, and what do we want to repeat? We want to repeat zooAnimal. So every time we create a new one, we're creating a new zooAnimal array, an empty array, right? We have the open parens, close parens, that signifies an empty array of zooAnimals. And how many times we want to create it? As Chelsea said, the unique classification that count. With our countries example, it was the amount of continents that count. In our case, we had 5 continents. So we created 5 empty arrays. Okay? Yes? We're repeating this empty. We're creating 5 empty. I am not sure how many we have right now, the classifications, but for example, if we have 5 classification names, we're repeating it 5 times. Exactly. So it's going to be very similar to this. If you have to write it out, it will be an array of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it will be an array of zoo, animal, like that. So I'd have 5 of those if we have 5 unique classification names. Does that help you? So that's what we have. It could be 2, 3, 4, based on how many uniques we have. Any questions? Any questions about what we did on line 131? Okay. Again, that would be very similar to your Game of Thrones. That's what I'm saying. Like with that information, I really want us to get a leg up on creating the Game of Thrones lab, at least the sections part of it. Okay. Very similar to what we're doing right now. Cool. So let's keep going here. What's that? Yes, which we could now. We could do now. I mean, so Tiffany's saying we return sections. So we could return sections now and get rid of the error, because that's what we return at the end. But we're not done. There's more work to do. Yes, Chelsea.
How would the very top one, I understand how the second thing that we wrote knows it's exact, but how does the first one know that it's another?
How does the first one know? You mean what's inside the set?
No, the sort of above.
This one?
Yeah.
Because it's an array. It's an array. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. zooAnimals is an array. You sort it, it returns to an array. All right. So let's continue on. So number 4. Create an initial starting index for the sections. So here we'll create an initial starting index for the sections. So this is going to be a variable. And our initial index, we'll call it current index. And we'll set it to 0. Right? Arrays start from 0. So as we start from 0, why do we start from 0? 0 is our first array. Everybody? 0 is the first array that we want to put zooAnimals in. Okay? When we see a different classification, we increment by 1. We go to our second array, put more animals in there. We see a different classification, we go to our third array, put more animals in there. Yes? It depends. It depends. It could be a one-liner like our enum last week, right? Or it could be more lines like this. It depends on what the sections are. All right, so moving on here. Next we have our current classification. So get current classification name. To know when it changes. And the index.
To know when it changes, just like I did it the same. Oh, you're not telling it that it's the same as both of them.
Yes, we are telling it that. That's how we need variables to know. We need variables to know, to keep track of when it changes. So it starts off with, for example, mammal, and when it says, or amphibian, and when it says mammal, it goes to the next array to add stuff in the next array. Tiffany?
I get it, but it wouldn't know that if you don't give it a current index.
No. It would add everything in the same array. We wanted to add in different arrays based on the classification. Based on the classification name, you want to go to a different array. Or if you don't have a current index, right? Which index do you add it in? You have to be able to increment that index, that current index that you're in. We start off with 0, for example here, we start off with 0, right? Because look, we're not iterating through the sections. We're iterating through the sorted zooAnimals, right?
Oh.
The sorted zooAnimals doesn't know about sections. It just knows about its elements.
Okay.
Our job is to add the animal in the correct section.
Got you. So if not, then it would just put all of them into the first array.
Exactly, exactly. So we have two things keeping track of. One is the index, so we could increment to the next bucket, and the second is what classification are we currently looking at in order to increment that index. Any other questions? Okay, cool. So next up we have get the current classification name. So here we'll create a variable called current classification. And we have our sorted array, right? Sorted zooAnimals. So this is sorted animals here. We'll say that first, and we'll say that first represents the first element in the sorted array. Everybody with me? That first is the first zooAnimal. That first zooAnimal. And we're after classification. And this is an optional. We'll use new coalescing, and we'll say right. So here we have the current classification name. So we have enough information to start looping and creating our array of arrays. Any questions before we move on? Yes?
If you're sorting numbers, also do that first.
If you sort in numbers.
Now you have that first.
Our sorted animals is an array of zooAnimals. Whatever you sort in has some property on it. If it doesn't have a property, then that first is whatever that property is. Right? You have to be sorting some collection. That first is on a collection, any collection. It doesn't matter what collection. It could be an array, a set. That first is a property on any collection. That's the first element in the array. So if I have an array, it starts with Sering, goes to Brendan. That first would be Sering. Every situation is different. As developers, that's what I'm saying. Depends on what you're trying to classify. I think you're classifying by what? Episode or season, right? Season. That might be even easier than what we're doing right now. I think that information is there already for us. But you have to figure out what you're looking for, right? That first exists on the collection. If it's not a collection, there's no that first on it, right? So if I have 10 like an integer, there's no that first on 10, the integer. It's not a collection. If I have a string, Swift, I could say that first on it. It's a collection of characters. Cool? All right, so here we have our current classification. Come back to me if you have a next clarification question with that. All right, so step 6, we'll say loop over sorted zooAnimals and place in appropriate section, or yeah, section is fine. So here we'll say for animal in zooAnimals. No, not zooAnimals. Be careful there. If we say zooAnimals, we'll get a crack really quickly. So we have to use our sorted animals here. That's the one we sorted. Make sure you're using the sorted animals. Everybody, that's why we sorted them. Because we want to go through them chronologically, whether it be ascending or descending. So here we have for animal in sorted animals, if animal dot classification equal to our current classification, if the animal we're looking at belongs to the amphibian family, we put it in the current array. The current array is at index 0. Questions about what I just said? If the animal we're currently looking at belongs to, or if the classification of the current animal is amphibian, right? And our current classification is amphibian, we put it in that current array. We do not increment our index. Okay? So here, all what we do is we add it to the current array. So what do we have? We have sections, current index, right? append the animal we're looking at. Right? So again, sections is our array of arrays. Right? Section is our array of arrays. If we are looking at a classification from the current classification, meaning if we're looking at an amphibian animal and the current classification value is amphibian, what do? We add it in the current array. Yes, sir. A bit similar, right? A bit similar. There's patterns throughout what we do, right? Some of them will be similar, parallel, depends. Cool? All right, next up, if it's not, right, so we have an if statement. In that if statement, if it's the same classification, add it to the current array. Any questions about that? Else, if it's not, like if I'm looking at a class, if my current animal is a mammal, right? If my current animal that classification is a mammal, and my current classification is amphibian, am I adding it to that current array? No, right? That's where we have to say our current index gets incremented. I want to go to, no longer am I in index 0 with amphibian. I need to go to the next array, the next bucket. You fixed it, you did it, yeah. Very good, very good. Okay, any questions? So now is where we go in to say, hey, we're looking at a different classification. We want to go to a next array, one array up. Okay, so here we need to do a couple of things. First thing, we'll say current index gets incremented by 1. So if this is 0, it gets incremented by 1. 0 plus 1 is 1, right? If I'm here, it gets incremented by 1. I go to the next array. Everybody? Cool, so that's what that step does. Current index plus equal 1. What else we want to do? Very important. We want to change the current classification to that animal's classification. Yes, Stephen?
I have to know from that. I thought that there would be sections that sections that sections of
we have to append it as well, but we have to also increment the index. In the else statement, you have two things to do. Change the current index and change the current classification. And also append it to the array. So here we have our current classification. Current classification gets animal. We assign it what the animal's classification is. So now if we went to mammal, next time we go in our for loop, the current classification will be mammal. And if the animal I'm looking at is a mammal, put it in the mammal array. Everybody? Right? And we keep going through that until we've exhausted our sorted animals. So next step, we have to do sections, current index, append the animal, and then we return sections. So that's our array of arrays. This function returns our array of arrays. Right here. Any questions before we move on? Yes, sir.
So in this example, we increment the current index.
Yes.
I feel like in the past, when we wanted to go through all the indexes of something, we would use a loop to go through like all of them.
You can, but if you use a loop here, look at what, there's a difference. Because if we say index, index is going to be the index of the sorted animals. If we say dot enumerated on sorted animals, it will be the index of the array of animals. That's not what we want. We want the index of our section, our sections array.
If within the loop of for animal and sort of two animals, you did like for index, I mean for like the index in like 0 dot 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 sections.
So every time you're going through an outer for loop, you'll be going through the inner for loop. Now you have a quadratic algorithm, and also you're doing more work than needed. Here we're going through this n times. right? Big O of n, everybody, right? This algorithm is big O of n. Currently, I'm just going through all the elements of sorted animals once. And I'm doing my logic to add it. I don't have a next for loop going through my sections. Actually, there's no need for that there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because at any one point, I don't want to go through the inner loop of my sections. I just want to increment it based on the classification. Cool? Very good. Yes, sir. I know. Game of Thrones is very hot today. Yeah. First of all, make your sections first. Then the logic for changing the cell's direction, that you do in your cell for all. That's simply making a mod operator on your sections. Is my section, my current count, my section, is it even or odd? That code is not done in the sections logic here. Cell for all. Right? If I have 3 sections, I toggle between 0, 1, 2. Right? Cool? All right, great. All right, so we are good here. Anybody knows how many classifications we have, like from what we did yesterday? I might have it on my phone. We're trying to do a unit test here. Anybody? We have 5. Okay. Okay, let's just run it and test it. So everybody has written the code, right? Let's go to our view controller and test out our code. Pretty soon we'll see what unit test is. That would be a good unit test question or unit test example. Like, hey, we want to test how many animals we have or how many classifications we have. We could write a simple test for it as opposed to going to our view controller, the view did load, and do something there. Everybody with me? We'll introduce unit test in the next unit. But for now, we'll simply go to our view controller and test out our code. Where's a good place to test my code? View did load. We don't have a view did load, so we need to write one, right? So let's go ahead and write our view did load and call super. Right? Make sure you call super. Super takes care of its own initializations and implementations. We have to call the super of the parent. And here we'll simply test for number of classifications. Or test for number of classifications count. Like how many do we have? So print there are and how do we get access to it? Again, it's a type method we created. So we call the type. The type is called zooAnimal. And zooAnimal.classification sections that count. And we could actually also print out what the classifications are. So classifications are zooAnimal.classification sections or maybe just do a dump of it. Actually, that's probably better visually. So remember we saw dump last week. So I could just dump the contents instead here. So dump the contents of zooAnimal.classification sections. So the dump shows us a better visual representation of our data as opposed to print. Because if we print, we'll have a big blob of the array of arrays. It's going to be hard to identify them. With the dump, it flattens out the data in a hierarchical manner, right? And it's easier to read. So at this point, let's run our app and see what we have. Thank you. Okay, what do we have here? All right, so there are 5, as you guys mentioned, right? Right. So already we saw we have 5 classifications, right? Everybody? And here we have the dump of the elements. So we have 5 elements in our array of arrays. We use the dump function to dump out the contents of our classification sections. Right? So here we have zooAnimal, we have anaconda, classification amphibian, we have a penguin, classification bird. It has 4 elements, right? So for classification bird, we have 4 elements. We have a flamingo, which is also a bird. We have a toucan, which is also a bird. And we have an eagle, which is also a bird. So I don't have to go through all of them, but we've seen that our section, our array of arrays works. Everybody with me? So that part of our code is good, right? So as we said earlier, if you have, for example, an assessment or anything using data like that, forget the UI. This is more complicated. You see what I'm saying? Like, it could be very flexible with what you work on. If you have data where you have to manipulate the data first before you do the UI on the application, okay? Because you spend 80% of the time or whatever doing UI, fixing the constraints, whatever, as opposed to getting data. And data is the application. You could fix the UI after. Get to your data first, right? For Friday will be less data intensive. So work your UI out and then get to the data part of it. But you as a developer at some point have to be the one making that decision. Am I stronger with UI? Can I blow through it? Am I weaker with data? Whatever you're weaker with, start first, okay? And also, to keep that there, whatever you're weaker with, start first, yes. But whatever is harder, also do first. A little complicated there, so you have to balance it out, right? Almost, it depends, okay? It depends. All right, so again, it could be very flexible as to what you work on first, but for Friday, UI will probably be more important there. And passing data from object 1 to object 2. Getting prepared for segue solid. Okay, cool, so we have data, that works. Let's continue with our UI for our application. The first UI we'll work with for this particular app is the basic table view. The basic table view is what we're after, right? So we'll create a UITabBarController, and our first table view will basically show the animals with the basic subtitle cell. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. So let's go to our main storyboard. Any questions about sections before we leave sections? Yes?
Can you go back to the last part of the
The view deload?
No, the creation of the I don't know if it's online.
So we wrote the steps out, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way down in the for loop. Any other questions about sections while we're here? Yes, sir.
Should we start something very quickly?
For Game of Thrones, yes. So if today you could buzz that out, that would be excellent. Because even if we do say it's due next week, I know what happens, right? We say do it next week. You do your assessments on Friday. You put your leg up on Saturday. Sunday you take a stroll. Next thing you know, you're slacking out. It's like, can I get an extension? Right? While it's fresh in our minds with sections, do the sections. Do the sections method. All right, you good, Chelsea? Yes, sir.
Sorry, how long is the assessment? This time?
1 hour to 8 hours.
So like 1 day?
1 day. Everybody got that? So Matt's question was, how long is the assessment on Friday? 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. You finish at 10:15. Have a good weekend. And bring on my Game of Thrones for me on Monday. Yes, sir.
Is there any deal with the format?
The format is a project we built. We'll fork, and then project to build, and open book. As far as the format, essential parts of it, you have a table view to create. You'll have data to pass from one view controller to a next view controller. And then you'll have some UI kit elements to work with. Stuff we've seen so far. Cool? Yeah, I said it's open book. Oh, can it not be open book? Do you want it to be open book? Last year at the same time. This was open book last year. This was open book. This was open book. The next one was open book. The next one after that was open book. All of them were open books. This guy has a short memory. This guy, his memory is very short. Multiple choice. There's no multiple choice in the interview. Is it A, big O of N, big O? All right. I mean, there might be, depends on the job, but at the end of the day, your whiteboarding won't be multiple choice. Not in our class. I mean, not that project for Unit 2 assessment. Yes?
Let's get back to sections for a second. Can I be more explicit with sections, or can I make that part of my model data?
This is model data. We're in the model.
Okay.
Yeah. This is owned by the model. Right? The model is our zoo animal here. We're in the model class, or model struct.
Fair enough.
Yeah. It's not in the view controller. It shouldn't be in the view controller.
Not quite how I meant, but I wasn't sure.
You worded it correctly. The sections data should be in the model. Our zoo animal is the model.
Well, I do understand like this is more dynamic approach to what I'm asking, but I guess I'm just asking if I feel like very literal with my section data. But for the struct, like let section equal string and then call that somehow to more directly on section.
You can. I mean, just like rewarding the function naming. Like section as in the data for your rows and stuff. What's the exact question there?
I'll try to formulate the question.
Okay, because right now that model owns the sections data. Right?
But it's pulling that section data from information itself.
The model. Exactly. So everything is the model. Everything is encapsulated in the model. Right? I have no view controller code making my sections for me. That would be bad, right? But the model, the zoo animal model, it encapsulates all the data for my zoo animal. If I want the sections, if I want my table view to work from sections, I call my classification sections function. If I want a flat array, I call zooAnimals.
So you're saying like this is the best way to go about what I'm asking you to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Because right there, there's a decoupling. You decouple the view controller and the model. Right?
You don't want to hard code it, just say this is going to be that.
No hard coding with sections there. No. I could add more classifications later, and our code holds. I could add, for example, 5 more classifications in the model, in that particular zoo animals here. It won't break anything. Because we haven't hard coded anything in this particular function. There's no return 5, there's no if an amphibian equal to whatever. There's nothing like that. Cool? So it's very dynamic. Cool? All right, good questions. All right, so let's go to the UI for our application. UI. Let's go to the storyboard. How are we doing with break? We good? We good for now? We good for now? Okay. All right. So I think the best way to approach this is to create a tab bar controller. That way we have access to all the table views we've created. Is that fair? Is that fair? Because as I said, we have about 3 different table views to work on. The first one is the basic table view. The second one is our table view, our custom table view cell. And the third one is the custom table view cell with the sections. Yeah. So we'll have access to code bases where the 3 things are being done. So if I want to create just a UITableViewCell with a subtitle, I have the code for that. If I want to create a custom cell with the code, I have the code for that. If I want to create a custom cell with sections, I have the code for that. Is that fair? So we have 3 view controllers, we have 3 tabs. Cool? All right. So let's go ahead and do it. Great, great, great. So my first view controller, we called it, how did I rename this? Huh, it's weird. Did not rename here. Let's try to refactor this name again. So refactor name of the animal list controller. How did my view controller name change? Let's call it animal view controller. Or better yet, this one is just, it's not sections per se, right? So basic animal table view controller. Basic cell animal controller. Basic table view, sorry. Basic cell is fine, that's fine. Basic cell animal controller, that's fine. Press enter. Still didn't change, a little weird here. Let's do one thing, let's delete this. No, yours didn't change, did yours change? Yeah, so let's start afresh. Let's delete the view controller. Delete. So right click on it and delete. Delete the view controller. Right click on it, delete view controller. And move to trash. Move to trash. Okay? All right, great. We know how to create view controllers, right? So Command N, and let's create 3 view controllers. The first one is just called basic animal cell view controller, or basic animal cell controller. It's UI view controller. It's a CocoaTouch class. Anytime we're using a subclass, it's a CocoaTouch class. And we are subclassing from UI view controller. Cool? So our class is called basic animal cell controller because we have 3 different controllers. The next one we'll call a different name, but this one is just basic animal cell controller. And press next. And create. So this is number 1. Let's create 2 more. So Command N again. CocoaTouch class. Next. And this time we'll call it custom cell view controller. Custom cell view controller, second one. Create. And for our third view controller, Command N, CocoaTouch class, subclass of UI view controller. We'll call this one sections or animal sections. So, we have no table cell. Right now we just have UI view controllers. 3 UI view controllers. So this one is animal sections view controller. Click next. Create. Great. So here we have 3 view controllers. We have a basic animal cell controller, a custom cell view controller, and an animal sections view controller. Right? So we have the classes. Let's go ahead and create the UI. Remember, every scene you have needs to be managed by a view controller. Every scene you have in your storyboard needs to be managed by a UI view controller class. So this first view controller, click on it. Click on our basic cell, our basic animal cell controller. You could use 2 ways to embed. One way we saw yesterday was click on editor and embed a navigation controller. So editor here, which we saw yesterday. So I want to embed my view controller in a navigation controller. And yesterday we saw editor up here as well. And we could say edit, editor, embed, navigation controller, or we could go to the constraints area at the bottom. Just know the 2 exist. So here we've embedded our basic cell animal controller in a navigation controller. Great. Next, we want to embed our navigation controller in a tab bar controller. So click on your navigation controller, embed it in a tab bar controller, and this is what the UI looks like now. Let me zoom in here. What's your question, Eric? Yeah, we did that with our countries app last week. Right? The countries app, we had 2 tabs, very similar, and we embedded the navigation controller in a tab bar controller. Because when that tab bar controller comes on screen, it also has a navigation bar, and it has a bottom bar or a tab bar. All right, cool. So we need to do 2 more actions. So we need to add 2 more sets of navigation controllers and view controllers. Everybody with me? All right, so go ahead and add a view controller. We'll get 2 view controllers onto our canvas. This is view controller number 2. Can we just option drag here? Nope. Okay, get a 3rd controller. So view controller number 3. I think you could copy, paste. All right, let me zoom in here, see what the UI looks like. This is what we have right now. And embed both those view controllers in a nav controller. So this second view controller, embed in a navigation controller. I'm just repositioning them to make them look better. And my 3rd view controller, embed in a nav controller. So this is what we have. Great. And I'll position this guy somewhat in the center, right here. I'll let us catch up. If you've caught up, you could connect, so control drag to connect your tab bar controller to your navigation controller, control drag over from your tab bar controller to your nav controller, and the relationship is a view controllers relationship. Yeah. How are we doing? Can we continue? Okay, so we're all good. We all ready? So I want to connect my tab bar controller to the navigation controllers. I will control drag from the tab bar controller over to the navigation controller. Right, Eric? Okay. So control drag from the tab bar controller over to your navigation controller. You're creating a parent-child relationship. The parent is the tab bar controller. The child is that navigation controller. My tab bar controller has 3 children. So here I connect, the relationship is, make sure you select view controller relationship. It's not a segue, it's a relationship. So click on view controllers. And also we want to control drag from our tab bar controller to our 3rd view controller. And also create that relationship of view controllers. Great. So this is our UI so far. Greg, question?
No.
Okay. Yes, sir.
When do you go to like control drag from hand to south or from top to hand?
In that case, our tab bar controller is the main view. A tab bar controller has view controllers as its children, right? Because the tab bar controller, at the bottom, you have the tabs. In our particular app, we'll have 3 tabs. So the relationship we created is a relationship with the child, right? That's why we select view controllers, because view controllers is a property on the tab bar controller. A tab bar controller could have many children. That's why it's view controllers. It's like an array of view controllers. Yes. With the navigation controller, which we had previously, like yesterday, the relationship there is the nav controller is the root, and it has view controllers, but the root view controller for it is the first one you connect it to. And then now it becomes a navigation stack. Cool? where as you segue from A to B, it pushes it onto the navigation stack. And then when you click the back button, it pops it off the stack.
And this is the same as creating custom navigation for the file, right? Because it has the option.
Yes, you could also create, as we get into programmatic UI, which we will, we'll create everything programmatically. Any other questions? Yes.
When you control that grab of the tab bar to the navigation controller, what do you select again?
View controllers. From the tab bar to the nav bar, to the nav controller, the relationship is view controllers. Yes.
This is like just stuff we can do. This wasn't part of the lab, right?
No. But to better encapsulate what the lab is, we created 3 different views because we have, yeah. Because other than that, it would have to be a bunch of like commenting code out, and you don't know what works. And on Friday, you're like, oh, how do I create this cell? Cool? Yeah. All right, how we doing? We good? All right, so let's keep editing our UI. Our first scene knows how to be managed. It has a view controller. Do we agree? Right, our first view controller here has a manager. It has our basic cell, our basic animal cell controller class, correct? We need to change the identity. Remember that. If you have a view controller on Friday, a new view controller, you drag in a new view controller, you need a class for it. But that's not all. You need to change the class's type. In Attributes Inspector, you need to go to Identity Inspector and make that scene the class to that custom class you created. What does that mean? This is what we're about to do. So, let's zoom in here. This one only says a generic view controller. We want to change it such that this view controller has a name we created earlier. Right? So let's open up our Attributes Inspector, get to the Identity Inspector, click on your second view controller, click on the second view controller, click on that bar, that black bar tab there. Click on your second view controller, right? And let's go over to the Identity Inspector. Do we see the Identity Inspector next to the Attributes Inspector, right? Big things we've been using, we should know now. We have the Identity Inspector. We have identity, meaning that's where you go to change the class. Attributes Inspector, properties, where you go to change properties. In Size Inspector, you go there to change the width, the height, and constraints. Everybody? Connections, that's where you go to see what connections you have. Cool? Those are the elements we really make use of in the inspector's window. Cool. So for the Identity Inspector, for my second class, we call it Custom Cell View Controller. Please, 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 I'll say it 1,000 times and we might still forget, right? Because one of the things, right? There's so many parts in Xcode to do things and go wrong places. This is one of the places you don't want to go wrong. When you hear and you change the class name, what do? Press enter. Very good. So make sure to press enter because look, my inherited module is not on. My code will break. It will say cannot find file. So please press enter here so that your custom cell view controller is part of your zooAnimals project, right? So make sure you press enter there to commit that change. Next up, let's go to our third view controller here. So if you've done everything correctly, look, the name changes. It's now saying custom cell view controller. If it still says view controller, you haven't correctly set your class. So let's go to the third one. It says view controller because we haven't set the class for it. That's the third controller. I'll click on it. I will navigate over to my Identity Inspector. I'll change the name. What do we call this one? Sections. Animal sections. I'll make sure to press enter. And my inherit module is now checked. I'm good. I'll navigate back. I'll hover over and I'll see it's now animal sections. So I'm good. I have animal sections. I have custom cell view controller and I have basic cell. So we're great. We are good here. Great. Let's start working on our table view. We have 3 chances to do table views today. So make notes, any questions you have, all that is part of review, okay? Some might be new, most of it is old. We've done it before. The new stuff, ask questions. The old stuff, ask questions, right? So here we have our first scene, our first view controller. We'll get to a table view. So we'll access a table view in our object library. Go to your object library, get a table view, and drag the table view over to your view controller here. For the first one, we're working on the first one first. The first one, what we're aiming for is to have this UI. Right? For the first one, this is the UI we're going after. Basic cell, nothing custom. So here we have our table view. Please set your constraints for your table view. Before you do anything else, set the constraints for your table view. What should be the constraints of this particular table view? 0 everywhere, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So we go to add new constraints. And we say 0 to the top, 0 leading, 0 bottom, 0 trailing. I add 4 constraints. I'm great, I'm good. Next step, what are we doing? We're adding a prototype cell, right? So we navigate over to the attributes inspector. Make sure your table view is selected. Navigate to the attributes inspector. And where it says prototype cells here, we change the number to 1. We only need 1 prototype cell. For Game of Thrones, you need 2 prototype cells. Okay? For this particular table view, 1 prototype cell. Great. No need to set constraints on this cell. It's a prototype cell. And next up, we want to change, it's a subtitle, right? So we're going for, this is a subtitle. Actually, I'll do the code and show you guys what you might forget on Friday, and then we'll fix it. Yes, question?
I would say this is a good time to just put the identifier.
Yes, we'll do that next. We'll do the identifier now. So Tiffany it's a good time to put the identifier, so we'll go ahead and put the identifier now. So click on your cell, and let's change the identifier. So where it says identifier here, we could simply write animal cell. And what are we doing again? Press enter. Okay. So identifier is used in the queue for reusable cell, right? The queue for reusable cell looks for that identifier. It comes to Storyboard. It sees the cell. It returns the cell. It doesn't see that cell. It crashes, right? Cool. So we have an identifier. We are good. Let's go to code now. Actually, keep up your assistant. Let's get the assistant editor up and running. Assistant editor. If your view controller doesn't come up here, simply option click on the particular view controller you want. So when you open up your assistant editor, everybody, it doesn't show up currently, right? Whatever view, whatever class I want to show up to the right here, I option click on it. In our case, I want to option click on my basic animal cell controller. Right? Option click on it, it comes up. You could create some more space for us here. We do not need the navigation bar anymore, the navigation area anymore. Get some more space going. I come on some computers and I see like a square area for Xcode. Like, you guys are good. I haven't done anything with the navigation bar. We haven't given it a title. We probably should give it a title, but yeah. Oh, the navigation bar, you mean? This one. Not bar, sorry. Navigation area. So the navigation area or the drawer or the panel is this first button here. So this one is for the navigation area, the first, the left column. For the bottom, this is the debug area. And for our inspectors column, it's the third button. The document outline. Which one? Which one? The document outline. So Chelsea is talking about the document outline. How do we get access to the document outline? Focus on where I'm zooming in here. Do we see where it says View as iPhone? Do we see where it says View as iPhone? This is the document outline. It opens the drawer, it closes the drawer. Cool? So really maximize your space, right? I like to see more code when I'm doing code. Everybody? All right, so here we have our basic cell. We have some boilerplate code we'll just get rid of. No need for that here. Command A to format your code, right? We like to see our code nicely formatted. Command A, Control I. Get in the habit of formatting your code. We like beautiful code, right? We like to see beautiful code. We like to write beautiful code. It's a beautiful thing. So here, what do we need? We need to control drag a table view. So I'll control drag my table view over to my view controller, and it's simply called table view. Simply called table view. Feel free to call your table view whatever you want. I'm in the habit of, if it's a table view, I call it a table view, right? But if you want to call it animal table view, that's up to you. But if you have multiple table views which exist, then you could have different names for your table views. Okay? But you have one table view, just call it table view. Backwards, right? Where we had, yeah, you could do either or. Get in the habit of typing it up so you know better what, right? It's also a nice feeling, right? Just to type. Yes? This particular one here, is it connected? It's not connected. That's weird. Xcode. I guarantee you, I closed this. We dragged the thing over, correct?
Yeah, so if it's empty, that means it's definitely not.
I mean, right here, like it doesn't show it's connected.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess it's
But
If you write it on top,
one second, I'll just close Xcode and reopen it at this case. I changed the class. That's why I was able to drag it here. 1 second. Let's redo this. 1 second. Command Z. Command Z. Let's verify that we have connected the class here. Click on your view controller. Go to your identity inspector. And we have the class. The class is correct. We have basic cell. Verify that you have basic cell as the class. Do we all have that? Okay, cool.
I'm getting
Let's do it the reverse way and see if Xcode is just being Xcode or if we have a different error. So here I'll say table view UI disconnected for now and reconnect it again via code, and let's see if we just need to restart Xcode, which might be the case. We've connected multiple things, so we know how to connect things. So if Xcode is being buggy, Xcode is being buggy. So here, you see it's not connecting. This is definitely an Xcode issue. I'll close it and reopen it, which I'll do right now. If you're having an issue, do the same. Close and reopen. I just introduced my assumption of what's happening. That's why there's so many updates, because they're trying to fix things like a lot right now. Like there was so much new things that I added this year in Xcode and everything that it's caused more errors than normal. All right, let's see if that fixed the issue. So back to our table view. If this doesn't work either. Let's see. Doesn't work. Yours works. Awesome. That's good. Mine works the reverse way. Bogus. Let's run it and see what's happening. Run the app and put a breakpoint at your VD load. Run the app, put a breakpoint in your VD load.
Wait, I think it's just, I don't know, maybe the circle that's buggy because I broke it fine and shows that.
Yeah, let's just run the code. As long as our VD load gets called and we have our table view on screen, we are good to go. So I'm running my app not on my phone. Something is not connected. Class key table view not connected. Okay. Do you guys have errors on your end? Okay. The table view is not connected here. Okay, open up your table view, right? Access your table view. We have an error with our connection somewhere. Click on your view controller. Click on the first view controller and go to connections. Go to your connections inspector. Go to your connections inspector. Everybody? Do you see the connections inspector? We have a connection here. Table view to table view. I don't know how that came up here. Doesn't look quite right. I'm gonna remove it. Remove that relationship. Keep the relationship, just remove, if you have any connection in your table view, remove the connection. Okay? And let's go back to our code and see what's happening now. Still errors. What is happening? I have no more connections here. Great. Click on your table view, control drag over table view. It might be, one second. The class name is okay. The class name is basic cell. Oh, guys, one second. Pay attention. Live debugging. I'm seeing one potential cause of it. My inherit module is unchecked. Everybody? Do we see that? Right? Developers have to look for different places where things are breaking. Not every day it's smooth sailing. So make sure, let's remove it and reconnect it again. So it's basic cell. Press enter. Make sure that blue check is on. Everybody, is your blue check on? Okay, let's try this again. So I'm gonna drag over, look at that, right? It works now. So between refactoring, something went wrong. Between refactoring the name of the view controller, something went wrong, right, everybody? Because we refactored multiple times. So Xcode probably did not exactly refactor as we needed it to be, right? But let's confirm our code does work, everything does work. Select a simulator, run your app, remove the breakpoint for now, because we know what's happening now. And let's see what's happening. A table view should show up, which it does.
Oh, okay.
Right? Table view shows up, our tabs show up. Guys, you see what happened right now? It could take us hours to figure out what went wrong. So really pay attention to what happened there. What happened here was, if we click on our inspector, if we click on our identity inspector, this blue check was not checked. Our project, our file wasn't part of the project. Everybody with me? It's not part of the file. It looks for it. It doesn't find it in the project. This is why we really emphasize when you put in basic animal cell or whatever, make sure this inherit module is checked. Because right now, our class is part of the module, part of our zooAnimals. Right? I know I'll say it, but it's going to happen to us. When we take time there, we'll be like, what's going on? I've been debugging this for like hours. I have to start a new project. All right? Yes? Did you error? Did you fix the error? What the error was this check? Okay. On the basis of. But I guess. Yes, that's one of the things. I figured that in a bunch of times. It's like, oh, we know it's different already. Oh, no. It's different or different. Right. This is different. Alright, can we continue? Let me slack out my thing because I want us to continue. So mine is in a working state. How many people are not working? Couple? Let me slack out what I have. That's better use of the time. Ta, 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 ta. Okay, slacked it out. Let's get it running on our computers, and I'll give you guys a couple minutes here, and we'll get started again. Okay, next step for folks who their code is running, right? Next step, make sure you have your identifier. You connected to the table view. Make sure that you confirm that your app does run. You do have a table view. Confirm that you do have 3 tabs, right? We have 3 tabs here. One has a table view and 2 doesn't, right? Next thing you could do, maybe give it a header, give it a title. So maybe call it basic cell for the first one. So the first one, I could simply call it, click on your tab, go to title here for the attributes inspector, and call it basic cell or subtitle cell. Subtitle cell, that's good. Give it a title, subtitle cell is good. So when you run it again, it has some title. Amini, were you able to run it? Excellent, perfect. Okay, so here we have subtitle cell, and we could differentiate between the other two because we haven't given them any title. Great. Let's continue on. All we need is a table view. So we have our table view. We could go ahead and code now. So close your storyboard, close your navigation area, and let's write code. A lot of whispers. How are we doing? Questions? All of a sudden, just quiet. Okay, so we have data, we have a table view, now we need to connect the two of them together. Participation, we're doing review here. What am I doing? What's the first thing I should do? Doesn't matter what order it is. What am I doing? Yes? Tanya says make an extension. Why do we make an extension, Luba? Because the instructor said that? Yeah? That's pretty much it. Anybody else with a different answer? Separate, right? That's a keyword there. Because we want to separate our code. We want somebody reading our code to be like, hey, you have a bug with your UITableViewDelegate method. Let's see where it is. They scroll right down to your extension. Your extension says UITableViewDataSource. It's very easy to get it. As opposed to putting everything in the ViewController class. You could imagine your ViewController class with 4 protocols it conforms to. All the code will be in the same class. So we use an extension to separate the code up. An extension also extends the class functionality. I could say I have a Luba class and extend it with more functionality. We'll see later, we could have like UI view, extend UI view. I could extend any class using an extension keyword. Right? We'll see what that looks more like in Unit 3. Okay? But for now, we use an extension to separate our logic. Right? If we have a data source extension, only data source methods go in there. If we have a UITableViewDelegate extension, only UITableViewDelegate methods go in there. Everybody with me? Okay? So, not because the instructor said it, right? Nothing because the instructor said it. If that's the answer, we need to ask the instructor why. Stop him. Okay? Yes? Okay, so let's do the extension first, right? And then we'll come to the next one. So here we say extension according to what Tanya said. So what are we extending? We're not extending UIViewController, guys. We'll see how to extend that. We could, where every view controller has some functionality on it. But that's not what we're doing. We're extending our basic animal controller. And what does it conform to? Using the colon here says it conforms to UITableViewDataSource. Excelente. Love the review. Okay, I stop here. My compiler complains. Why is my compiler complaining? Without looking at the error. Why is my compiler complaining? Chelsea. It is required methods. Yes. What's the first required method? Number of rows in sections. So we start typing in number of rows and we press enter. That's enough for autocomplete to work. Here we'll simply return 0 for now to get rid of the error. We'll come back to it later. What's my next required method? Mel. Self for row. We all agree? Self for row. Right? So number of rows in section. How many rows do we have in that section? Anybody? If we do not explicitly say how many sections we have, how many sections does our table view have? 1. Very good. So this table view will have 1 section because we do not explicitly return number of sections. Everybody with me? Very good. So here this is good. Return 0 to get rid of the error.
Section does not move the section line, section moves each individual line.
If it's 1 section, the whole section itself is just rows. So the only thing we need to return is the rows for section, which we do on line 22. So cell here. So we're using table view dequeue with reusable cell. Why dequeue with reusable cell? Why? David. David. At this point, if we're not sure, click on the decrease reusable cell, see what it says. So come and click on it and see what it says. Andy, what does decrease reusable cell do? It recycles the cell, right? Back to you, David, sir. What does decrease reusable cell do?
It recycles the cell in the array and create an array.
Okay. Be careful there, guys. When we see something 10 times, we have to know why, right? So, decrease reusable cell, it recycles the cell. It doesn't create a new one if it has one in memory already. Okay? My table view loads up. I have my table view here. As I scroll, if I need new cells, if there's cells in memory with the operating system, it gives us that cell in memory. It doesn't create a new one. Okay? When the app first runs, it gets all those cells using the reuse identifier. As I scroll through more content, if a cell exists already, decrease reusable cell gets an existing cell. Okay? Doesn't create a new one. There was a question up there. Yes.
There's a fixed amount of cells.
Yes. There's a fixed amount of cells. We don't know how many cells. We don't care. We don't care how many cells.
Yeah, but like at the screen.
There's an amount there that loads up. It might be 12. It might be 20. Right? There might be some cells down here that's loaded as well. That's off screen. Right?
Yeah.
So even if we have, say, 20 rows here, we might have 24 cells in memory. As it recycles, the first 4 cells gets recycled, goes to the bottom of the row, and so forth and so on. It's like a carousel, right? It doesn't go by new horses. It just goes around that merry-go-round. Everybody? Right? At no time will we have 100 cells in memory. Okay? That would be very bad for the operating system. It would crash. Right? Cool? David, you good? Okay, cool. Brendan, everybody know what that is? We'll be asking you guys in debrief what does decrease reusable cell is, what does it do? Those are one of the things you need to know for your interview anyway, and as a developer, you should be able to explain what it does. Right? There's a lot of resources on it. The Apple documentation says what it does. We stand up here, we say what it does. Right? So at this point, every line of code we write in, really know what that line of code does. Right? What does prepare for segue do? Right? Cassandra, what's prepare for segue do? So Cassandra says prepare for segue gets called when a transition is happening from view controller A to view controller B. Do we agree, Oscar? Right? And this is where we do our setup logic if we want to set up an object on the view controller we go into. Also very important for Friday. Okay? Thank you, Cassandra. Great, great, great. So here, let's just return cell for now. Get rid of our errors. For the reuse identifier, what did we use? Animal cell, right? Is it animal cell like this? Lowercase a. But be careful, right? Whatever you put in Storyboard, make sure that's what you put in here. So copy, paste. One place to copy, paste. Not your neighbor's code for Friday. This would be good for copy, paste, right? You go to Attribute Inspector, copy, paste, right, Luba? Right? You guys not sitting today. I'm just kidding. So copy, paste the animal cell and paste it in here, right? A minute, you're laughing. Don't look at Luba's code on Friday. I'm going to look at you. What do we do? Okay. All right, cool. So we have animal cell there. Great. Now, let's get data. We need data. We data hogs. So let's get data. Let's get data. So what is our data for this particular, we'll just say animals. So we have animals. This is just a flat array. It is not an array of arrays. Right, everybody? This is just a flat array. We agree? Okay. So here we have our animal, our zooAnimal array. Yes, this is the data for our table view. Right? Very good. So here we have a did set property observer. So what we want to do there, the reason why we do did set here, again, I'll reiterate it, is because when that object gets set, I want to automatically reload my table view. When that object gets set, when animals get set, I want to automatically reload my table view. My table view starts off being empty. View did load gets called. I set my animals array. View did load, I set my animals array. Did set gets called. Table view reloads. Data comes on screen. Yes, sir.
What if you reload, what if you put the array of animals?
You could put it directly in, you could do it directly there. But what if I tell you, oh, filter, have a filter function. All right. So here you're protecting yourself in future iterations of your code, right? Because anytime somebody changes your animals array, it reloads the table view. But yes, you could put it in the video load, but that's one place you put it. But now any place I change animals throughout my code, reload table view gets called. Cool? Good.
First, you did the way of waiting section, and then have the turn zero, the same title is created and source.
It's saying what?
Editing placeholder and source.
Delete that function and redo it. It might be an error on the auto completion part. So here again, did set say table view dot reload data. Right, great. In our view did load, well, not in our view did load, we write a helper function. We'll call it load data. And load data simply says animals, get me my zooAnimals, or zooAnimals, sorry. And here we want zooAnimal. We do not want classifications. This is not for this part, right, everybody? We do not want the array of arrays in that particular example. We only want our flat array, zooAnimals. Everybody? Question? So here I call load data in my view did load. And now for my number, how many did that work? In my number of rows, I will simply call animals.count.
Okay, so it's better to make a function of the animal instead of just putting that and then call the function and give it as opposed to just putting that out.
Yes, because we might need that load data. No. Okay, we're back. Okay, last function we need to work with is cell for row. Cell for row, last function we need to work with. On Friday, pay attention here. Know what you're doing, right? First step is to get a cell using the reusable cell. This is just a basic cell. So what is our cell type? What's our data type here? Cell. It's a UITableViewCell, correct? If we do in custom cell, then we cast it to the cell we expect, which we do later. But now we need to get an animal. How do I get an animal? Lilia, how do I get an animal here? So I want to get current animal. Let animal. What's our data? What's the name of our data? animals, right? So I use animals. What else? Then what? Double check your code. I'll wait for you. So here we have the animals array, but we need to access that particular index. How do we do that? We have an array. We use subscripting to access it. What am I putting in that open square bracket? That would be for an array of arrays. Lilia, thank you. Index path, right? So index path dot row, right? You said section before, but why not section? Exactly. We're not dealing with sections right now. We're only dealing with rows. Everybody? Everybody. So you're only dealing with rows. We deal index path dot row. Later, we'll do index path dot section for our sections table view. Cool? This is why we did the tab bar controller, because we really want to be able to access everything we did. So we have that for our notes on Friday. Great. I have an animal. What next? I want to configure my cell. Configure cell to be a subtitle. How many types of cells do we have? 5. What's the 5th? How many types of cells we have? With conviction, how many types of cells we have?
1.
How many styles?
Okay, so it's 1.
4, not 5, not 1.
What?
We went through that in the beginning.
Oh, like the actual what
The styles of
Yeah,
cells.
yeah, okay.
Let's show it. Let's show it. Let's show it. Let's show it.
Yeah, that's
What does Apple say for this? Appearance of cells, styles of cells. Right? Subtitle. We want it to be the bottom left option. So, configure cell to be a subtitle. What am I doing here? I want to take, first off, I'll say cell dot text label. What are we setting the text label to? The name of the animal, right? So I'll say animal.name. And what's the detail? Audience participation. Detailed text label. What am I setting this to? Animal what? Animal.info? Origin, right? Info is like the entire description, which you can do, it's fine, but for our particular UI here, it's the origin. Cool? So aardvark Africa. So that's enough information. Do we agree? That's enough information. Let's run our app and see. Actually, we need an image. Audience participation did not give me image here. How do I set the image? How do I set the image? Cell dot. How do I UI image? So we say named, right? Animal.image number, which is an int. That, right? Everybody heard Senior Christian here. He said that description. That gives us a string from an integer. Yes? You could do string interpolation. You could also do index path.row plus 1.
Well, I did it differently. I made a function called configure stuff, like we did that before.
Yes, you can.
And I did for.
But did you do that configure cell in the same view controller?
No, I did it in a cell script.
That's the second part. The first part is not a custom cell. With a custom cell later, we'll have a configure cell function. This is not a custom cell. You went directly to the custom cell. I think that's what you did.
I think that's what I'm doing. Because yesterday, it's almost like I tried to do the configure, like I tried to configure something to look exactly like
What we did earlier. Got it. Got it. But this one doesn't use a custom cell.
Okay, so
Yes, Chelsea?
for configuring the cell, so we need to know exactly.
cell because the I don't know what that would be called, like where it says text label and detail text label. Those are things that we don't.
We're configuring the cell here. We're configuring the cell meaning we're setting up the cell's properties.
Yeah, but we know those things based on the kind of cell.
Yes, we have this type of cell here. Our cell is subtitle. We have an image view, we have a title, and we have a subtitle.
No, I was asking like, but they basically all have it
Except for left. For left detail. Left detail doesn't have an image. Well, doesn't have an image view. This one has an image view. This one has an image view. This one has an image view. Subtitle.
Basically, yeah, they all have their own different
Setup configurations. All right. Any other questions before we actually run the app? Yes. This one is not a custom cell. We haven't created any cell class. No, that's just the identifier. Everybody, so animal cell here doesn't make it a custom cell. This is just the way to identify the prototype cell. That's the next. That was the next place we were gonna go. We're gonna run the app. Let's run the app first, and that's gonna be your next. What's happening here? When I run the app, let's see what's happening, and we'll come to your observation. Cool. So I run the app. Nothing happens. What's happening, guys? Why is my app not working? I didn't connect the information. What information? Yulia got it. Well, we have our table view on Friday. It's 11 p.m., right? Oh my God, like, why am I not getting data? Yulia comes up, well, not on Friday. Yulia shouts out on Friday. Make sure you have table view that data source equals self, right? Because you don't have that, no matter what you do, you're not going to get data. You need to tell your view controller, you need to register your view controller as the data source. Everybody?
That's in the view the load, right?
View the load, yes. That's a good place to go. Well, then you go to the next step, right? There's always a next step unless you get data, okay? We developers, we debug. So, first step, make sure in your view did load, you say table view dot data source equal to self, right? So you need to register the data source for the table view. The data source will be that view controller. The data source will be our basic animal cell controller. It's going to manage the data source. It's going to give the table view its data. Yes? There could be, but whatever that thing is needs to be the one having the cell for row, having the number of rows. Okay? All right, let's run our app again. And now we have data, right? So we have our animals coming up. We have our aardvark and we have our zebras. Amini, what is happening for you? We shall find out. That's what she said. Scroll down. Yulia, question. Up, down, this way? Is that it? Tiffany, are you done?
No.
Eric, what's your question? Yeah, you can. You can. You could do stuff in code. You could set up the table view all in code, which we'll do later. I think you need 3 or 4. Cool? Now we use Storyboard to set up our UI, but we'll do stuff in code later. Like there'll be projects where everything is done in code, no Storyboard. Cool. Next step. Are we done? There's a problem. Yes, Yulia. Make sure you set your text label name, animal name, line 45. Yeah, line 45. Okay, we have a problem. Tanya. The detail is not showing up. Guys, this does not look like, this app does not look like the app we have here. Do we agree? Wait, what? This doesn't look right. I have advark here. I have advark here, but I'm missing Africa. Where's Africa? Chelsea? Africa doesn't show. The origin is missing. Okay.
No, I just don't know why, because I'm calling.
What is the why? Why? Why is it not showing to me? Why is it not showing up? Tanya? Right? Whispers? Tanya says because we did not change in Interface Builder, we need to explicitly say the cell style is subtitle. Okay? So Friday, when your thing is not showing up, please remember, we need to go back to our cell. We need to go back to our cell. We need to go back to our cell here. Click on our cell. Go to Attribute Inspector. Go to Attribute Inspector. Do we see where it says TableViewCell style? Right? Make sure that this says the style is, look, we have 4 styles, right? Make sure the style says Subtitle. Right? Mr. Searing. Right? On Friday, right? Okay. All right, so make sure this says Subtitle. And now we run our app again. Subtitle, run the app again. We'll take a break and we'll come back to do the custom cell. So let's render this correctly. My app is running. And here we have our advark, we have the origin, right? Everybody? Any questions so far?
Yes, can we go back to the logic in the cell for row?
Cell for row for our view controller. This guy. So we configured the cell here, 3 properties on the cell. We updated the image view, the text label, and the detailed text label. We return cell.
Okay, so we didn't have to put for as.
Remember that as the typecasting is going to come later. That's custom cells. If you're not doing a custom cell, you simply use the basic UITableViewCell. This uses cell is of type UITableViewCell, not a custom cell. Okay? All right, so we'll stop here and we'll reconvene in 5 minutes.